I Want to Jump Like Dee Dee, with me, Giles Sibbald, is the music podcast that does music a bit differently. I'm talking to some incredible musicians, DJs and producers about how they use an experimental mindset to fuel their own creativity, pursue new challenges, overcome fears, bounce back from mistakes. I'm especially privileged today to be talking to one of my favourite drummers, one whose precision, swing, rhythmic and melodic inventiveness supplies the foundations to one of the most enduring, emotive, significant, and dare I say it, iconic bands of the 21st century. And I've dared to say that word because, you know, iconic is in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? 15th of July sees the release of their 7th studio album since the really seminal Turn on the Bright Lights, and it's called The Other Side of Make Believe, which, if the singles released so far are anything to go by, shows to me a further evolution of their ability to create these sort of unfamiliar yet familiar soundscapes. That band, of course, is Interpol, and my guest, of course, is Sam Fogarino. Sam, welcome, and thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome, especially with that lovely introduction. Yes, I'll do it
like
tomorrow.
I've kind of, I've got kind of one thing to do, so I better get it right. I better get the intro right. I've kind of got I just wanted to sort of start before we go into this kind of the mindset thing that, you might have heard this a lot, but PDA for me is one of the, and I don't know if there's any sort of answer to this, so I don't feel obliged to anything, but it's one of the great rock songs, like hands down. No question, it's got the best bridge and outro I think that's like ever been written. It's kind of like, I'm not religious, but it's kind of like what a religious experience must feel like. It's just kind of like, I don't know. I kind of get these feelings of sort of what it gives me is like this sort of feelings of euphoria, and also like this real sort of sense of companionship, which I think really kind of highlights like the importance of music emotionally to us.
Yeah, I could empathize with that. I liked that it didn't, when I first heard the song, I'll go back. Let me start over again. I joined the band in 2000, and that song had already been demoed twice. Already two different versions that were recorded for posterity. And the first one I wasn't so much into. The second time around is when I was like, I need to be in this band. Like that's it. I have the opportunity. It must be seized. It's like, I must somehow like deter or just crush the competition before they even have a chance to think about it. Wow. Because this is, I haven't heard it before, but you kind of know what you want when you hear it. And it was like, I would go out and buy this now. So if I have the chance to actually be a part of this, like there's no other option. Like I need to be in this band. And it was those elements that you hear in that track. It has kind of some rock muscle, it's kind of, it has a strength to it, but then there's all the other stuff. There is like a high emotional content, and there is anxiety, and a little bit of hope. And that's kind of, I realize that's how I walk around through life, So I definitely empathize with, your summation of that song. And, that was just the beginning too.
Absolutely.
Of having that kind of foundation, that even as a drummer, like I need to be stimulated intellectually to do this primal thing. If it doesn't have that upper level of intelligence, then they need, I can't do that. And the funny thing is when I became a drummer, it was because that was the slot that was open. I had a drum kit for some reason, and I had a willing parent to let me and my young friends play in the basement of our terraced home in West Philadelphia. So it wasn't the love of drums, it was the love of the combination that creates a rock song. So
Mm.
it's like, okay, well, I'll get behind those drums, sure. And that was when I was 12 and I'm 53. So
Yeah.
it was quite a long time ago. So here I am now.
What was it? What was it that can you remember? What was it that was there something that attracted you to the drums per se, or did you just kind of like fall into it by accident?
It was kind of an act. I mean, going back further from that point, when I was a young boy,
Mm.
my mother and father bought me like a toy drum kit that was approximated a real true drum kit. So it
Wow.
wasn't just a little toy.
Yeah.
It was tunable.
Mm.
And I did have some gravity to it, but it didn't click yet. And I
Yeah.
tried other instruments. My mother played piano in the
Mm.
house all the time.
Mm.
And I was, that appealed to me, but the intricacy of it didn't.
Yeah.
And the same with guitar. Like, of course, guitar is appealing to any young person who likes rock music,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but this whole thing, like, that's too it's too tedious.
Mm.
So what did appeal to me was its drums are instant. You hit
Yeah.
them, they make a sound, and
Oh yeah.
you do have to form some coordination, but when you do get it together, it's like, oh, there it is. Where it's like,
Yeah.
you learn guitar chords, but then you got to learn guitar progressions, and then you got to learn scales. And drums is just like, no, it just seemed to flow naturally, you
Wow.
know. And you're able to, not that I encourage people to like kind of slag off theory, but you don't
Mm.
really need to know drum theory to
Mm.
really get going.
Yeah.
And then I got good at it. So it was kind of just, better than default. It was
Yeah.
like, it was kind of default, but I was willing. Like, okay,
Mm.
because by the time I did turn 12, like preteen, I realized I had a place set for me.
Right. Okay.
So I was like, cool, I'll do that. And then I think it was over the years and really much later that I realized that, oh no, I do love doing this, and
Mm.
that there is a certain power here.
Yeah.
And, being kind of the black sheep of the musician's fold was appealing too, you know, and especially since the confidence I did have was like, I'm playing songs, I'm not playing drums. I'm
Mm.
playing songs first with a drum kit.
With a drum kit.
Yeah, so it was very musical to me, and I did see the importance of where it lies in an arrangement of a song,
Yeah.
whether it be busy or simplistic. It just didn't matter. Like,
Mm.
and I always like with my first serious band, I was around 21 years old, and really built a relationship with the singer and songwriter of the band, because the vocals and the drums are the bookends of the songs.
Yeah.
So at the
Yeah.
bottom, you have
Absolutely.
the foundation. And then, of course, the vocal is the top of the song. It's what everybody
Yeah.
hears first.
Mm.
So that kind of carried me in terms of my own confidence and like kind of
Mm.
self-worth within this passion of music.
Yeah.
And then in the meantime, I did get back to guitar, and the piano gave way to synthesizers. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
kind of concurrently, I was building my musical vocabulary while playing drums in Interpol.
Can I ask you sort of what role your, for example, like your mum, for example, sort of played in sort of encouraging you? The reason I'm sort of asking is that when I was a kid, when I was at 8, I started playing the cello, and I did really well at it. I kind of like went through my exams. I did a bit of theory, didn't like the theory, but I did it.
Yeah.
And but I all like through that time, I felt like I was sort of being pushed into it, and
Mm.
and kind of like being taken away from just sort of dicking around with my friends and stuff
Right.
like that.
Yeah. Here's the thing with my mother. So when I, can come to recall childhood as around 4 or 5 years old, especially 5, like it's pretty vivid.
Mm.
And she would sit at the piano and kind of transpose classical pieces and then kind of ad-lib from there. So she'd get the chord because she played by ear. So she'd get the arrangement down and then interpret it. So she was doing covers of classical music. And then what really inspired her was Led Zeppelin, Joe Cocker, you know, Diana Ross, The Temptations, The Who, you know, Yes, and all these, you know, the classic, what is now classic rock, which was then was like cutting edge FM radio.
Yeah.
And she had that foundation. It was a bit of, I think she possessed like a punk rock aesthetic without even knowing it, or not aesthetic, but the ethos of like, just do it your way, do it your way. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
At the same time, she did try to get me to go to piano lessons. And what kind of shocked me was like, I ended up going to some Catholic school and had some nun teaching me. Mary had a little lamb. And I was like, I don't know, I want to learn Rocket Man, or like, Don't Let the Sun Go Down. Where's the Elton John? And she would blast that in the house. And I told her, I said, Mom, I don't like this. And she's like, oh, well, you don't have to go then. I was like, it's that easy? So, you know, while she thought she was doing a good thing, when I gave her feedback, she's like, oh, no, you don't. She didn't do that. She didn't have this. She encouraged me to find something that I did enjoy.
That you did enjoy.
And stick with. So she wasn't just like saying, oh, no, you could just be, you know, free form throughout life, because you can't. But she said, well, find something that you like. And a couple of years later, when a drum kit ended up in the basement of the house, she was like, okay, all right, play it. And, you know, she never gave me any grief about it being bloody awful for like the first year. But she did come back and say, wow, you got much better. Like, wow, from the time you started to now, you can play that Rolling Stone song now. You know, and
that's amazing. You
know, encouraged me to do it with my young bandmates, who were they were a little older than me at the time, but the oldest person was 16, you know, to my 12.
Right.
And so everybody loved Laura because, you know, we can go jam in my basement, and there was a mom that wasn't going to complain. And if it bothered her, she left the house.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's such a kind of like liberating and sort of positive way to, you know, to get you interested and keep you interested, and actually to, like you said earlier, you know, you just touched on, you know, with your self-belief, you know, about, you know, kind of building that and saying, okay, this is something that I like, and I can do it. Having that environment is just so important, isn't it?
It really is, you know, because we could rebel against our parents, and there is a certain kind of thrill in that, and like, you know, it's you're en route to finding yourself in that rebellion. But when you have the support, they rebel with you. So I kind of had a rebellious mom who was doing the same thing throughout life. She didn't follow the path. You know, she got divorced early, and, you know, she was an early proponent of, I don't need a fucking man. You know, like, I'll just do this. All life is lonely, you know, like I got to see the full picture. You know, you make decisions and they do have ramifications, but you end up with yourself. And yourself being a balanced individual within, you know, all the uncertainty of life and your insecurities, and, you know, battling with feelings you don't understand and getting through that. You need yourself. And there was a point in my early 20s when I was like, you know, Mom, I'm not going to do this drumming thing anymore. Can you send me to school for radiology? And she's like, yeah, but not now. You're going to finish. Don't give up yet. You can go to school in your 30s. You're in your 20s now. Go make this happen.
Incredible.
And I was a couple years off. You know, Interpol happened when I was 32. And I was like, fucking hell, she was right.
She was right.
Because even after the first Interpol album, if it didn't do as well, didn't lead to a second, I could very well have gone to radiology school at 33 years old. That's not ridiculous at all. And I didn't have to. And thank God I don't have to at 53. And funny, another ironic thing, my ex-wife is engaged to a radiologist.
Oh, wow.
And he happens to be a fucking lovely guy. I really like him. I consider
Brilliant.
him like a new friend, and I'm happy that this man is around our daughter. And it's kind of ironic,
There's
like
something sort of serendipitous about all of
for
that, isn't there?
real.
There really is.
Yeah. And I could be happy that, there was some weird thing that I have this, pre-existing respect for his position in life before I even meet him.
Yeah.
And then here's a man that's going to eventually be my daughter's stepfather, who's a radiologist, which was my second choice in life. So, it's kind of funny. I as I get to know him, I kind of wonder, like, what drove you to
Yeah.
this path? Because
To
I
this sort of
was
path,
kind
yeah.
of there,
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny. I just realized that too as we're
Wow.
talking. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, that is an interesting. What was the, I mean, the kind of the scenes that I know obviously, you moved to New York in sort of 97, but the sort of the hangout scenes, the people that you sort of gravitated towards, obviously, you had your band when you were kind of 12 and, things like that, but the kind of the people with your mindset, the sort of people that really appeal to you, what were they like?
It was those people who, no matter what they did, that seemed to me, what I could glean is that they carved their own path.
Mm,
There was something, like, for lack of a better term, that was rebellious.
yeah.
And maybe, if not rebellious, like, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to try
Mm,
this path. It kind of goes to the left and maybe kind of curves outward. There might be a little double backing, but
yeah.
you're going to end up happy,
Yeah.
or happiness is not static. You're going to end up content
Yeah.
and okay with yourself. And there was always, like, within, of course, if you were a musician, you had my attention,
Yeah.
whether, no matter what level of success, I wanted to know why. But there
Mm,
was also people who were lawyers, people who were in the medical profession, that just had an ease to them. And, like, at a baseline, they were satisfied with their lot.
mm,
And that appealed to me. And, getting to know them as a human being, like, what are their fears? What creates anxiety in them? How do they deal with it?
yeah.
And it was always that person who's a little more cavalier,
Mm,
and just, randomly meeting people who, the people who kind of chose that route in life
that route. Yeah.
versus the dictated, the societal norm type of
Mm,
thing. And I realized that I have pity for them,
mm,
and I could identify with what bothered them and what their insecurities were, but it was kind of like, well, that's why, because you're kind of forced into this path. You're a square peg
yeah.
doing you go to high school, then you have adult education, if you will,
Yeah.
college, university, and then there you are,
Yeah. I can,
in debt. And
I
I was
could,
like,
sorry, I can totally relate to that. I mean, that, that in a way is what, what I went through. And there was always this, I'm like it's why I think you kind of like environment at that age is so important. I was an only child. Well, I wasn't only, I am an only child. And,
right.
I always felt that, felt like the spotlight was on me. And, my dad had certain things that had happened to him in his childhood. So you can see how it sort of passes through generations,
Mhm.
this sort of influence. And, I didn't feel strong enough, for, quite a long time about going against what he wanted. And it sounds terribly sort of sad now, because eventually I obviously have,
Right.
and I'm doing my own thing. But you can see how, as you said, you can see how people sort of get into that and
Yeah.
become, it's like, okay, well, this is like a kind of rigid life path almost.
Exactly. And it's all about, like, putting on a game face and thickening your own skin.
Mm,
For what?
yeah,
And that was like, okay, well, what? Okay, a job with some money. What good is money if you're not content?
absolutely. Absolutely right.
And my parents dropped out of high school.
Mm,
Um, and didn't fall flat on their faces. You know, I think they have regrets, you know, and wish that they could have done things a little differently, but they did what made them happy.
Mm.
And so they didn't care about not having quote unquote professional jobs, you know,
Mm.
but they didn't, at least they didn't fall prey to the rat race,
Yeah.
you know? And where they fell short, they encouraged me.
Mm.
At a certain point, I was in my 20s, and the band I was in called the Holy Terrors had the same manager. His name was John Tovar, as Marilyn Manson.
Mm.
One day, Brian Warner, Marilyn Manson, calls me up, and we were acquainted. We hung out at the same places, but
Yeah.
we never talked on the phone or anything. We weren't friends per se. And he asked me to join Marilyn Manson. And it only took me 2 seconds to decline because I knew I didn't fit into that aesthetic.
Yeah.
So it was a thrill that he asked me to join, but he wasn't going to get the same drummer that he was asking, because that transpired by what I was playing.
Mm.
And I told my dad, and my dad got pissed off.
Mm.
My dad was like, "You're blowing it. What the fuck are you doing? Why are you not?" And you know, his understanding only went that far. But I was like, "Dad, you're really like, you're blowing it for Marilyn Manson, because you're supposed to be horrified, and you're encouraging me." And I just thought that was so funny.
Yeah.
And it really just gave me fuel. It was kind of funny because that's where the rub was. I'll show you, Dad. Like, I don't have to join Marilyn Manson to make it, to quote unquote make it.
I wonder. Yeah, I mean, I wonder if that is, you know, part of that decision, or that kind of reaction is just like your gut instinct saying, no, this is not right.
It was really quick, but I did somehow, my brain kind of filed through.
Yeah.
And kind of projected what that would be. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't be signed to Interscope Records. I'd be signed to Marilyn Manson. I'd have a weekly stipend, and could be very, if they were replacing somebody for me, then I could be replaceable.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and in the band I was in, I had a voice, and you know, I carved out this method of playing drums to the music, and it was just like, there was something, it's like your stomach brain said, no, no, no. While the head brain is like, oh, maybe, you know, you're being rational, you're looking at the full picture. And it was tempting, you know, it would have been an out. I would have had a better apartment at that point, you know, and would have done some touring. And of course, you know, any drug I wanted, you know, at the time, like, you know, superfluous stuff like that. But you know, I did realize that would be momentary, and you know, could actually, with all due respect to him as a person, could have gotten in the way of me doing anything else. I could have been pigeonholed. You know, sadly, like the backup band to Marilyn Manson is never really talked about. You know, he had the impact. If there's any respect given, it's to him. It's not to the bass player or drummer of his band.
Yeah.
So, and that was so crucial. Like,
so crucial for you, for your own kind of like.
I was into these outfits that the whole thing was quintessential. You know, it was a whole, like at the time, like My Blood, like Loveless was still, it was a couple of years old, but it was still my sonic Bible. And you know, although Kevin Shields is the brainchild, like the proof is in the sound of everything, that they all had some equal importance there.
Yeah.
You know, and like Pixies, Sonic Youth, and you know, these are proper bands.
Yeah.
You know?
Where it's a kind of sort of, you know, amazing individuals, but also an amazing collective as well.
Exactly.
Kind of band as a collective.
Exactly. It wasn't like, you know, Kim Gordon and Sonic Youth. It was Sonic Youth, then Kim Gordon or Thurston or Steve Shelley.
Yeah.
You know, and that was kind of what I wanted, you know, and knew that I wouldn't get that in Marilyn Manson. And, you know, regardless of my dad being pissed off at my short-sightedness.
Like, Dad, I know best this time.
Yeah, I really had to put my foot down, you know, and was like, you know, I can't believe I'm arguing with my father over this. Like,
over this, yeah.
Why I shouldn't be joining this band.
Did you have at the sort of the outset a sort of clear idea of what and of what success looked like for you?
Yeah, I did, and I think it kind of resonated with my like blue collar kind of humble upbringing, which wasn't greedy. It was like look for a positive sense of comfort, not complacency, but being comfortable and being at ease with what you end up with. So I was at a Pixies show in 1991 at a place called the Cameo Theater on South Beach, before South Beach was the fabulous, the American Riviera or whatever bullshit they call it. Right? That it's not. It's pretty, but it ain't anything close to French. So
all those corporate spin doctors now are kind of turning at this.
Right. Yeah, they failed. They didn't get me.
Yeah.
So I'm there in the audience and I'm like, wow, okay, this is big enough to be really exciting, but it's small enough to still be intimate. I can see them on stage. I can see Frank Black's facial expressions. And I was like, this is Mecca. Like, this is it. You can make a living at this. I was like, I want this.
Yeah.
Exactly how that happened, I still didn't know, but I was like, I could do this. This is fine. And, it kind of loosely, definitely, it kind of loosely dictated what kind of music it was going to be, which, made sense in a way. It was like this very much like kind of anti-rock star thing. Like it doesn't need to be an arena or a stadium, and it could be bigger than a club. So there was still like, I still wanted something, that was beyond just playing music somewhere. I did want a career, I did want stability. And I was like, well, I have to find the path to trajectory, and that's what took time, and, finding people who kind of agree with this kind of ideal in terms of what a band could be. And then I found Interpol, almost 10 years later.
Yeah.
And while it wasn't spot on, they did fancy playing like an arena. The music kind of hit the spot. And I was like, this is the vehicle. It can't be just desire. You have to have something, the intangible, solid proof, if you will, in that contradiction. Music.
What was it sort of musically that sort of, or about the music that sort of hit the spot for you?
It was the fucking sense of atmosphere.
Yeah.
There was a transcendence, there was an otherness, and while it was still very grounded. So lyrically, Paul was really good at expressing discontent and dissatisfaction with himself and with life around him. But it didn't just stop at that. I don't like this. There was also the hope for something better, or like the idealization of a higher plane to hit.
Yeah. And
it simply was like the melodic output was something that resonated with me.
Yeah.
And it just kind of related to music that at that point in time were staples, like Sonic Youth and the Pixies and My Bloody Valentine and Swerve Driver, guitar-driven music that rocks heavy, but has something else. It just didn't stop at bombast, and it's dynamic too. I loved the fact that, PDA, as you mentioned, had this instrumental break with no drums.
Yeah.
That's jazz.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it was like, wow, I would love to Keith Moon all over that. It was so cool that I didn't. It was like forced restraint, and I can't wait to just jump back in and just drive it home. So it really spoke to my team player sense, or better yet, not just team player, like sense of independence, and not needing to be Keith Moon, actually. Like Charlie Watts in that situation and just drive that thing home. And
it's
interesting. So gratifying.
It's interesting you say that, because just before we sort of came on camera, we were talking about Dave Barbarossa, and Dave actually sort of as about 4 years ago started teaching me drums as well.
Oh, cool.
You know, obviously, it was sort of hugely sort of, you know, he did a great job, but you know, some of, you know, when you get to my age, it's kind of like, you know, there's only a certain distance you can go. But anyway, but he said, I remember him saying that actually those quiet times are the you know, where you know not to drum and just to stop, are the hardest, but also the most powerful that you can do as a drummer, just to let the other stuff just kind of take its course.
Oh, I totally agree. Like, you're creating a rest, and the singer, the listener rather, is still affected by what you were doing leading up to that. And you're building anticipation and excitement, because people know the drums dropped out, something's going to happen next. You know, you're creating this dynamic that was like, okay, time to breathe.
Yeah.
You know, and that's I mean, those kind of dynamics make a song.
Yeah.
What makes it exciting. And then when the drums finally re-enter, you're back at where you were. At the same time, it's on a different level. You hit a different plane now.
Yeah.
You know, because you're not leading up to that point, you're leaving it.
Yeah.
You know, you're exiting. And there's something to like, I'd liken drums to the gait. It's how the song walks. It's the physical embodiment of the temperament of the track. And my drumming is way more collected than I am as a human being. You know what I mean? It's like it's my perfect alter ego, you know, in beat form. It's very well tempered, and like, you know, even the anger is purposeful.
Is purposeful.
You know, yeah, it doesn't hurt anybody. You know, it actually sounds good.
Well, actually, while we're on that, you know, how important is or how important is emotional intelligence been for you, sort of through your career, whether it be in your musical career, sort of just generally sort of in your life, and what have you kind of learned from, you know, being self-aware and having self-awareness and you know, being around bandmates, and also the, you know, the entourage, you know, how have you used that through your life?
It's a constant challenge, you know, and you never hit a plateau of understanding it, because we're constantly changing. And Paul and I just had a brief discussion outside of the hotel that the longer we do this, the harder it gets. We hit a certain point of age where we're gliding for a while, but then it becomes an upward battle, because your personal life, your priorities change.
Yeah.
So as much as I enjoy doing this, I kind of rather would be home with my two daughters, watching them grow up. You know, but then there's also like, this is what dad does. This is how I provide. You know, so it does get harder emotionally, and which will affect your physical being as well. So it becomes really important to really kind of, you know, when you do when your anxiety triggers anger, you know, that just means you're out of sorts, you're afraid, you're unsure, and you can't act on it. You know, you gotta let it kind of, you got to decompress before you confront anything.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right with that. Yeah,
it is. And then, you know, hopefully you're lucky with being with bandmates, when you do kind of lose the plot for a second, that they understand it's just momentary. But man, when you do have the ability to express discontent with a calm voice, results happen.
Yeah.
Because everybody,
I was going to say, I think, you know, generally in life, it's just harder than it was to get stuff done, isn't it? It's really hard. You know,
Yeah.
you like, I don't know, even the simple things like, you know, if you want to change, oh, I don't know, if you want to change your telephone provider, or if you want to do this, and it's like, oh God, I mean, everything seems to test you, and these things like kind of like emotional intelligence. So I just think are just really important, much more important perhaps than they were, to kind of getting through life and sort of you know being content in what you do. But it takes, like you said, you know, it takes a whole lot of work, doesn't it?
It really
Regularly.
does. It does. I think we, you know, because we hold on to the mini traumas throughout life.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, we're kind of wired to be informed by that to stay alive.
Mm.
You know, back in the day, you know, the trauma would be, you know, you're faced with death as an animal because a bigger
Yeah.
animal is going to eat you.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so easy to like be subconsciously informed by these mini events throughout life that were negative, to where it will impact, like, oh, I gotta switch from T-Mobile to Sprint.
Yeah.
And what you do is you kind of fall into this mode of perfectionism, knowing how that conversation is going to go. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's going to be tiresome and tedious, and you're going to want to shoot the messenger to death.
To death.
You
Yes.
know, and
Absolutely right.
you
Yeah.
have to realize that that's in your head.
Mm.
That's informed from something that's unrelated, and you have to kind of step up and just do it. And
Yeah.
then when you do, you realize, no, you're in control. That was kind of easy.
Yeah.
But you will then face it again
Yeah.
with changing car insurance companies, or
Absolutely.
breaking up with a partner, or
Yeah.
all that stuff. And you do realize that, you know, it's important to, you know, kind of have your habitat kind of sorted.
It's interesting as well, you know, because I mean, generally as we sort of get older, it's harder. I find sometimes it's harder to be adaptable
Yeah.
as you sort of get older. You know, I don't know. There's something that makes you feel anxious when you have to adapt quickly, and whether it's kind of like our brain sort of cognitively can't cope with it. I mean, I'm the same. I'm 54. I've just turned 54. You know, and it's the same kind of thing. I think cognitively, there's some, I don't know, kind of decline fucking going on. You know, which is
It
which is
is.
really scary. But
It is. And then it's funny because in the professional mode, I can turn on a dime.
absolutely,
Like there are certain things that that I could flow with that perhaps my bandmates aren't comfortable with, and do
yeah,
feel that sense of stability, instability,
yeah,
you know, where I can kind of just pivot and go, oh, okay. But at
mm,
home, you know, it's a different thing. And it will, the funny thing is that I have that flexibility in my professional life, but if something goes south at home, it will spill in, and I'll
yeah,
take it with me as much
yeah,
as you can. And that's when the emotional intelligence really has to kick in.
yeah.
You have to separate the two,
The two,
you know. And it really comes down to, like, if I have any kind of issue that leans towards something negative, if I have this tone of voice, you're going to hear it much more clear than
yeah,
if I'm shouting at you, you
mm,
know.
mm,
And you know, we you know inside that you're just shouting at somebody because of how you feel. It's not them. But being on the receiving end, it's just like, whoa, I can't hear you.
I can't hear you. Yeah,
Yeah. You know, and that's been the lesson, you know, is to express any kind of sense of discomfort or fear with a tempered voice.
if we
You know,
if we, you know, on a sort of related subject, but talking about the new record, for example, that's coming out, and how that was, you know, how that sort of evolved, and obviously, you know, talking about adaptability, because we've had 2 years of COVID, you know, sort of in between, when things have been a whole lot different. I mean, how what does the new record, how did that work out for you, and what does it really kind of mean to you after kind of going through all of this?
well, the funny thing with COVID is, and this shows you how like askew my normal is, that the self-isolating, the lockdown part really didn't feel any different, except I didn't have the option now to then, oh, I want to go out to dinner tonight.
Yeah.
I was kind of fine with it.
With
Like I
that,
was
yeah.
just kind of holding up in my studio, and I just had more time to follow the muse wherever it was leading.
Yeah.
And how that translated to Interpol world was, okay, we usually, kind of convene in some dank basement in New York City. And, it's an old punk rock way of doing it. I need to see the sweat coming down your brow.
Yeah.
And that'll inspire something. But now we can't. And so it was like, how is this going to work? I'm like, because it has to. We have a record to deliver. And regardless of being unsure if we'll ever tour again, we still have a record to deliver, and we still got to, we're not dead. We have to continue. And it was like, well, guys, it's easy. Daniel, send your ideas to me and Paul. And then separately or, sometimes in tandem, come up with what we would do in person. But the beautiful thing was that you were now isolated from frustrating anybody.
Yeah.
Of being put on the spot to come up with that part like right then and there. And it was a good trade-off because you didn't have the synergy of being in a room together, but now you had the luxury of time. So you get the song of the day. I have 24 to 48 hours to deliver something convincing. And I had the freedom to explore any means possible. And then Paul had that. He realized, wow, I could sing at a different volume. I'm not battling Fender twin amplifiers and a loud snare drum. So we're a relaxed approach on either side. And that we realized that there was, this is still the band, but with a bit of a different delivery. Yeah. And that became kind of exciting. And so then the process became intrinsic. So it's not jamming in a room together. It's doing this. It's a different version. It's a more collected, calm, and emotionally intelligent version of what we're doing. You couldn't sit there and go, I can't do this, because if you can't, then there is no song.
You're basically screwed.
You're just screwed. So you have to forget the obstacle and turn the obstacle into the advantage.
I guess that sort of shows a little bit of our kind of resilience, doesn't it, in the face of, sort of situations where you think, what the fuck am I going to do here? How are we going to work this out?
Yeah.
When you have to, when you know that you've got your obligations to whoever, to your fans, to yourselves as well.
Your livelihood, to your everything.
Yeah.
And and then you do realize that, a lot of the times can't means won't. Yes, it just means won't. It means I don't want to try. It means I'm set in my ways, and if we can't do this, we're done.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
And as harsh as it could be, if I said that directly to one of my bandmates, they're fighting words. That's like,
yes.
As true as it may be, like it's kind of curt, and you don't want to throw the pie in the face. Yeah. But that's what it means. And better than having a conversation about like can't means won't, you demonstrate it.
Yeah.
And can't means I will, in spite of.
Would you call yourself a risk taker?
Yeah. I love it.
You love it.
I do. I could say that now because these risks have given yield to something fruitful.
They paid off. Yeah.
They paid off, but yeah, like you don't take a risk, you don't succeed.
Yeah.
And, I learned that by driving to New York with $50 in my pocket.
Wow. Yeah.
And going, okay, well, let's see what happens. In my very late 20s, it's like, do or die. I don't want to be, 30 something in South Florida going, wow, if only I went to New York that day.
Yeah.
That's like a nightmare to me. Just being like, okay, this is opportunity. And, you learn too that, failure does give yield to opportunity. Like, okay, this failed. Why? How do I do this? And I think being very flexible and willing in the moment to kind of just alter the path led to something good. So if I didn't have the inclination to go to New York with $50 in my pocket, I wouldn't have done what I've done to lead myself to Interpol.
It's interesting. It's interesting as well, isn't it? When you sort of, sorry to interrupt, Sam.
Okay.
When you take those risks, it's sometimes the fear of failure. It becomes a sort of it can be a very personal thing, can't it? It's like if you create an idea and you have a vision of this kind of idea, and somebody says, "Do you know what?"
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah,
I really like that. My idea is best.
It's true. It's true. And I think having the skill, if you will, to take a risk, your idea will be heard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of a part of it that, I could have sat there in South Florida with my grand design, not ever coming to fruition.
Yeah.
And what good is that? Just talking about what could have happened and looking for excuses as to why it didn't. And as opposed to like, okay, well, it could end up really ugly, and I could end up a parody of myself. But if I don't, I already am a parody of myself. If I don't, then all of this is for nothing, because I mean, music, they have business classes, you can go to school for audio engineering or whatever, but that's vapor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's many books on the music business and all that, but it's to make money. It's an opinion.
Yeah.
Because,
exactly.
there was no, Interpol didn't follow this path. Interpol, again, that was Daniel's drive to just get done what he thought was right. And, ignoring all the rejection and just sticking to his idea. My idea is good. This is going to happen. And finding the people who are sympathetic to it.
I mean, to deal with that. I mean, that takes some balls to deal with that and to, come back from rejection after rejection. I remember when I started this podcast, right, and I had to be kind of dragged into doing it. I was like, well, everybody's going to say no. Nobody's going to want to talk to me and all this sort of stuff. And it's a shit idea, blah, blah, blah. And, but of course, like, quite a few people sort of said yes straight away. And, you've said yes to come on it, but you can still have that sort of, I still have that sort of fear sometimes that, why would anybody want to talk to me about this sort of stuff?
Yeah. I still experience that too, with perhaps collaborations outside of the band, or my endeavors out. The Interpol is very safe, but the other things that I do outside of this, it's really like, why? And you really want to collaborate with me? Do
you still feel that? Do you still feel?
Yeah. And I think that the thing that's useful to a degree is humility. Of course, we don't listen to that because here we are talking. But I think there is that could be detrimental, could get in the way. But I still think it means that you're grounded and you're not infallible. So there is an emotional intelligence to that too. It's just like kind of just knowing like nobody is the shit. Nobody is. This is all momentary, and the public at large who consumes podcasts and music and everything are so damn fickle. And there's so many choices that you really can't really believe that you're not worth it. But it's like, I think it's a quality control thing.
Yeah.
And it's the imperfect human way of like, that's how we show it. Like, this sucks.
It's very true.
No, it doesn't, but it's just, I always, if I get too confident, I fail. Like looking back in the past, like if I ignored the show in front of me that's going to have like 20,000 people, I have faltered, And when I remain kind of like, I have to keep my head on straight, you know, and really am digging deep for that thing inside me that's going to ensure that I do a good job. You know, you need to be kind of humble.
Yeah.
You know, you need to realize you straddle this thin line of like, I am worthy, but I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
I'm not everything, you know. So I think it's like like I said, it maintains some level of quality.
Yeah.
And just how we kind of process that, and what it says to us kind of, it mirrors like some kind of insecurity. But you know, an animal in the wild can't just walk around cavalier. You know, it's going to get eaten. You know, so you gotta be careful.
Yeah.
So, and it's when I remain humble about like I could fail, I don't. If I go at something like, this is no problem, I'll drop a stick or miss a beat or something, you know, you kind of lose the plot.
Yeah, that's true. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Sam, I've got to let you go because I know you've got to go. You've got a show to do tonight, haven't you?
Gotta go do a sound check. Yep.
Do a sound check and all that. So listen, thanks so much for coming on and sparing the time. It's been amazing talking to you. Really.
I'll talk to you anytime. Anytime, man. I'll be a yearly guest. It was really fun. I don't get to talk about this stuff too much.
Thanks for listening to the show, and I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you'll tune in for the next episode. In the meantime, it would be really awesome if you could rate and review the show, and also share it with any friends who you think might enjoy it.